My love of quilting and sewing began when I would watch my Aunt Sandra work on her quilts. And when she would come up here, we'd go visit her. She would always be working on something, and I just loved everything she did. So in 1984, I was living in Combine, Texas, and one of my neighbors told me that there was a quilting class being offered as a community education course at Crandall High School. And so we both signed up for that, and it was a 6-week course. The first 4 weeks we learned how to make quilt blocks, and the 5th week we learned how to sew them all together into the quilt top. And the last week we learned how to put the quilt together and quilt it. I get my ideas from quilt magazines. I subscribe to about 3 different quilt magazines, and I love to get those in the mailbox and look through them and pick out ideas. I get them from other quilters, my Quilt Guild friends. I get ideas from going to quilt shows and from going to various quilt shops. Get lots of ideas at quilt shops. They always have a lot of samples. I just got back from the International Quilt Show in Houston, where quilters come from all over the world, everywhere. It's like Disney World for quilters. I go to about 6 quilt shows a year. The big International Quilt Show in Houston, the Dallas show, the Plano show, and then our guild has a show in Terrell, and probably a few more too. I try to work on a project every day, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes. I like to sew a little bit each day. And if I don't sew every day, I'm cranky. So I always have something ready to go to stitch on. I have my quilt studio here upstairs, and mostly up here I work on the machine quilting, piecing, cutting all my fabric, choosing fabrics, all of that. And then I do my handwork in the evenings downstairs. I always have a little bag packed, so if I'm not the driver in the car, then I can work on my stitching while someone else drives. I don't like to waste any time, and I don't like traffic, so stitching is fun for me. But I try to sew a little bit every day if I can. One quilt in particular that I know that I make a lot, called the Flannel Log Cabin Blue Jean quilt. I've made probably 12 of them, and so after I made 4 or 5, I decided I was going to keep up with my time just to see how long it takes to make one. And that quilt is all done on the machine, no hand work involved, and that quilt takes 40 hours. So I also made a cowboy boot quilt for my friend Kim, and I kept the time on that, and that was machine applique mixed with piecing, and that one took 45 hours. So, and both of those quilts are a throw size, like on the sofa. Smaller than a twin. So I would say between 40 and 45 hours for a throw size quilt if it's done on machine. I like to get my fabric from good quilt shops. Thread count varies greatly from place to place. I learned a long time ago from quilt friends and quilt shop owners that there are really 3 different grades of fabrics. There's kind of a low grade, not to sound snooty, but there's a lower grade fabric that you would buy like at Walmart. Then there is a middle grade fabric that you would buy at Joann's or Hancock's. And then there is a premium grade fabric that is a very high thread count, and you can really tell from touch. The high grade fabric they sell at quilt shops, and that's why the lesser grade fabric costs less, and with the fewer thread count, and the higher grade fabric at a quilt shop costs more. And you should always buy the best fabric that you can afford, because the better the fabric, the longer it's going to last. Even if I'm not here, my quilts will be here for a long time.